Today, we're opening up an archaeological case file. We're looking into a society that the world, well, it completely forgot about them for thousands of years. But here's the twist. Historians now think of it as the very blueprint for civilization. We're talking, of course, about ancient Sumer. So how do you prove a case like that? Well, we're going to act like investigators. We'll be using a really specific set of criteria. Think of it like a historical checklist to sift through all the evidence the Sumerians left behind in the dust of what is now modern-day Iraq. And really, that's what makes this case so incredible. I mean, for centuries, this hugely influential society was a total mystery. Nobody knew it existed. Then, in the 1850s, archaeologists in Mesopotamia started digging and, wow, they began unearthing these amazing artifacts, like the Standard of Ur. And suddenly they were looking at a world way more complex than they ever could have imagined. Okay, so to solve this case, we need to know what we're looking for, right? We need the official definition. Historians say a civilization is a society that has developed its own arts, sciences, and organization. It's a pretty high bar, for sure, but it gives us a really clear standard to measure all this evidence against. And here it is. This is our official checklist. These are the 7 traits we're going to be hunting for. If we can find solid evidence for every single one of these, from a stable food supply all the way to a written language, then we can close the case. So, let's start the investigation. First up, we're going to look at the absolute bedrock of any large society. I'm talking about the foundations, the stuff that lets thousands of people not just survive, but actually thrive together. First up on our list, a stable food supply. Now, you gotta understand, this was a huge challenge in Sumer. We're talking a land with scorching hot summers and hardly any rain. So how on earth did they feed everybody? Well, the evidence points to 2 pretty brilliant inventions. And what's so amazing is how these 2 things worked together. The Sumerians, they engineered these huge, complex irrigation systems, canals, dams, reservoirs, the whole shebang, to control the water. Then, at the same time, they invent the plow, which let them prepare the land for planting way faster than before. You put those 2 together, you've got a guaranteed, stable food supply. Boom! That's the first box on our checklist, ticked. Okay, so once you have a food surplus, something really important happens. Not everyone has to be a farmer anymore. And this is a massive turning point for any society. It's what allows a complex social structure to start forming with different jobs and different social levels. So let's see how that actually played out in Sumer. Right at the very top of the social pyramid, you had the leaders. We're talking priests, kings, and high-ranking officials. And the archaeology backs this up. We found their houses. They lived in these big, luxurious homes, a lot of them 2 stories high, right in the heart of the city. Okay, so below them, you've got what we'd call the middle class. And these guys were really the economic engine of the whole society. This group was made up of merchants, skilled craftspeople, and of course the farmers and fishers who were so important for that food supply we just talked about. And then, at the very bottom of this structure, were enslaved people. Most of them were prisoners captured in war, and they usually worked in private homes. So, you see this really clear 3-level system? That is undeniable proof of a complex social structure. So let's go ahead and check that one off our list too. All right, so we've got a stable food supply and a social structure. Check and check. Next up, we need to look for the systems that held it all together and gave it meaning. I'm talking about government and religion. So Sumerian society, it was run by these really powerful kings who had, let's just say, a very long job description. Think of them as the CEO, the lead engineer, the tax collector, and the top general, all rolled into one person. And here's the kicker. They created written laws to keep order. That right there is a solid check for a system of government. Now, religion. It was woven into absolutely every part of Sumerian life. In fact, one of the king's most important jobs was to build and take care of these huge temples called ziggurats. And these things were just enormous, mud brick towers with a special shrine sitting right at the very top. And when I say massive, I mean massive. Some of these ziggurats were 7 stories tall. Just picture it. These giant structures would have totally dominated the flat landscape for miles around. It's thought that the Sumerians believed they were like stairways for their gods to come down to earth. You know, a literal connection between the heavens and their world. So yeah, that's some pretty powerful evidence of an organized religious system. Item number 4, confirmed. Okay, we're on to the final phase of our investigation now. This is where we look for the signs of a truly advanced society, things like a developed culture and some world-changing innovations in technology and communication. And the arts were absolutely thriving in Sumer. I mean, we found all this intricate metalwork, gorgeous statues, and there's tons of evidence for a rich musical life. They had instruments like the lyre that were played at big ceremonies and feasts, and that tells you something important. This was a society that had time for creativity and beauty. So the arts, that's a definite check. But when it comes to technology, man, there is one Sumerian invention that stands head and shoulders above everything else: the wheel. It is impossible to overstate its impact. Before the wheel, you're dragging heavy stuff on sledges, getting stuck in the mud all the time. After the wheel, suddenly you can move massive loads, you can build war chariots, and you can expand trade like never before. It literally changed everything. And the evidence for this goes way, way back to around 3500 BCE. But here's a fascinating little twist. Its first use probably wasn't for moving things around. It was most likely a potter's wheel for shaping clay, just a truly game-changing piece of tech. And that's another confirmed item for our list. All right, here we are, our final piece of evidence: writing. Think about it. To manage a complex society with all these laws and trade deals and a history you want to remember, you've got to have a way to record information. And the Sumerians, they invented one of the world's very first writing systems. It's called cuneiform. It started out as simple little pictures. We call them pictographs. But over time, it evolved into this really sophisticated script that used a wedge-shaped tool to press symbols into wet clay tablets. And with this, they could record everything, from a simple trade of barley all the way to a king's official decree. It was the perfect tool for a government to collect taxes and for a society to write down its own history. And with that, we have our final piece of evidence. So, we've examined all the evidence. We've looked at it against our 7 criteria. We've investigated their food, their social order, their government, their religion, their arts, their technology, and their writing. So, what's the final verdict? What's the ruling in the case of ancient Sumer? The evidence is it's overwhelming. On every single count, from having a stable food supply to developing a written language, Sumer delivers. The verdict is in. Ancient Sumer was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the world's first great civilizations. Case closed. I mean, their legacy, everything from the wheel to written laws, it's literally the foundation that our modern world is built on. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? What artifacts, what kind of evidence will our civilization leave behind for archaeologists to find 5,000 years from now? And what on earth will they conclude about us?